All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 6th Lewiston City Council Workshop and City Council meeting. This session will be conducted remotely, and council members will only participate electronically. For those viewing online, please ensure that you join this meeting using the following website address: www.lewistonmaine.gov/2020cc. If you join this meeting using any other link, you may have trouble connecting properly, and we encourage you to log out and then rejoin the meeting using the correct website address that I just announced. And this website address is also located at the top of our meeting agenda. And we'll move right to Kathy. Should we do any type of roll before a workshop?
We certainly can if you'd like to, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to do it now. And again, at 7 o'clock if you'd like, just for clarification.
Please. We probably should. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Counselor from Ward 1?
Here.
Ward 2?
Here.
Ward 3?
Present.
Ward 4?
Present.
Ward 5?
Present.
Ward 6?
Present.
Ward 7?
Present.
Thank you. And also present for this meeting this evening is Mayor Kayer, City Administrator Dote, Finance Director Heather Hunter, Deputy City Administrator Dale Dowdy, and myself as the City Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll move to workshop agenda item A, Economic Development Plan and Update. And I think Link is going to be brought in for this one.
Can we also bring in Misty Parker as well? Thank you.
All right. Good evening. Lincoln, do you want to do an introduction or do you want me to just jump right in?
Well, I can do a very brief introduction. Really, Misty and Heidi have taken the lead on putting the flesh on an outline I'd put together several months back, but really Misty has really done the heavy lifting on this and pulled it together. I think they've got a pretty well conceived plan that will really help move the community into the future. I know council has been very interested in having metrics so we can help measure that as opposed to just the goodwill and smiling faces that come out of my department. So you actually have harder numbers to look at. And I think I'm not sure they're perfect yet, but they're certainly a step in the right direction, and we'll find some work well, some not so well. Some are overly time consuming to collect and may not add a lot of value. So I think this is a living document, but we really wanted to give you an update on where we stand with this and get your feedback afterwards. And with that, I would turn it over to Misty.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so you guys can follow along. Let's see. Give me 1 second. There we go. So to recap from where we left off the last time we presented to you, the Economic Development Plan focuses on 5 specific strategies, which are creating a vibrant, continuing to develop a vibrant downtown, supporting our existing businesses, attracting new businesses, workforce development, and community development. Tonight's workshop is really focused on defining what the metrics are that we have generated for our draft plan. And before we jump into those, really want to give you guys a background to how we came to the metrics that are presented in the plan you received in your packet and where the work goes from here. So considerations that staff took in when we were developing what our baseline data would be, what the metrics we would use to measure. We wanted to make sure it was from a reliable source. We wanted to make sure that was efficient, not just the collection of it, but also the analysis of that data, that it's informative to what we're trying to achieve, and that there's clarity of the outcomes of when we're trying to measure these strategies, what specifically are we trying to measure? The challenges that we've had over the last couple of months in trying to refine this list of metrics that we can report back to you on is that the time of data collection and when specific data sets are published. This is often done on an annual basis, or particular data is generated at different types of year. And so some is produced more often than others. Some is just strictly annual. The existing data systems and collection that is out there, there's a wide variety of different data sets that are available to help evaluate Lewiston's economy, but not all the systems are able to generate that data for us in a form that's going to be helpful to us. And that makes just trying to collect it and get that information back to you a challenge. Often there's inconsistent sources, so different data sources are reporting different types of similar data, but not the same. And so that's something we have to be cognizant of when we're collecting and trying to set a standard of what we're going to be reporting to you on to make sure that it's consistent every single time. So part of our process has been really looking at and documenting what the data sources are and when they, and what specifically we have utilized. Within City Hall, we generate an extreme amount of data that is helpful for these purposes, but unfortunately there's a lack of alignment between the systems that we have here in City Hall in being able to generate data for our purposes. It's something that we've been aware of and are continuing to make steps to improve, but this exercise also made us even more aware of some of the challenges we have. If you think of how a different department is collecting data, they have a very specific purpose in mind for that data collection. And so therefore what they're inputting and what they're able to output is not necessarily useful for different purposes other than what the original purpose was. So often we get different data sets that need to be linked together or need further analysis in order for the outputs we need. Also, sometimes some of the systems that we have in place just don't talk to each other. And so you might have one data set in one system and another data set in another system, and there's no efficient way to merge them. The use of proxy data to establish foundational data sources. When we could not find exactly what we needed, we had to pull together different data sets to make sure that we were able to define the indicators that helped us understand if we're achieving the outcomes that we're hoping. So that's why you may see in the final plan a number of different data sources mentioned. So starting out looking at our vibrant downtown, we have 3 specific outcomes that we are looking for when we think of a vibrant downtown that we can measure. So again, it's what we can measure. If we're looking at increased foot traffic in the downtown, meaning there's more people that are frequenting businesses, there's more people that are experiencing our downtown, there's more people living there. These are ways that we can sort of start to look at that. We can't get actual foot traffic. Trust me, we've researched this without having an actual person in place counting people on the sidewalk. We don't have a reliable way of collecting that data, but we can look at the diversity of businesses. We know that if it's all office in the downtown, that is very different foot traffic than if there's retail or restaurants. So really measuring the diversity of those businesses and that mix will help us determine what the increase in foot traffic is and what that means for attracting additional businesses. And looking at event counts. Events in the downtown bring a lot of people to our community. Sometimes those people come and they just go to the event and they leave. But oftentimes they stay, and even more times they're coming back to the community and coming back to the downtown. So that's another metric that we can easily report out and see what attraction rates we're having to getting people downtown. Another outcome is a more productive tax base. We can measure our commercial assessments and increases there. That's personal property as well as real property. We have the ability to measure private investment in the downtown. So that's the valuation that is recorded on building permits. So we can see how much people are putting into these projects and where. Public investment, what is the city actually investing in this area, whether it's infrastructure, parks, things of that nature, as well as housing units downtown and trying to get a handle on the increase in residential units in the downtown. The last outcome for this specific strategy, we talk about wanting to see a safe, clean downtown. And this one's a lot harder to measure. But one of the things that we have is police calls for service. So working with the police department, we've been able to generate specific to Lisbon Street, where a lot of the strategies have been targeted, specifically having a beat cop that's particularly focused on Lisbon Street. We identified the calls for service as one metric we could evaluate. We further refined that to really look at specific types of calls for service that we can see what type of activities the police are responding to, as opposed to just a traffic stop that happened to be in front of, 12 Lisbon Street. So those are random and not necessarily directed to the outcome we're looking at. So we've been able to refine some of that more. The next two, customer perceptions and business perceptions. A lot that we talk about when we talk about community safety in Lewiston really comes down to the perceptions of folks that have. We can report all the police data that we want, but if people don't feel that it's a safe, clean downtown, we may not feel that we're making the successes that we had hoped. These in the final plan are really marked as an area that needs more vetting. Surveys to generate these types of data sources are challenging. They can often be, they can go either way. They can be extremely successful, or they can have very little response rate. We also don't have the resources to be able to generate and push these out. We've talked a lot to different partners about ways we could approach this, and sort of received mixed feedback on the viability of successfully getting this off the ground. I would say, though, that we do see value in what these could bring. So we left them here to continue exploring and seeing what we could do. So do you guys want me to go through all of this, or would you like to stop and ask questions after each strategy? Mr. Mayor, I'd look to you.
Yeah, no, we'll at least give an opportunity between each strategy for any questions. Council, is anything on that so far? Okay, all set, Misty.
All right. The next strategy is supporting existing businesses. The first outcome that we're hoping to achieve with this strategy is a more productive tax base. So again, measuring our personal property, real property, building permits, and industrial space utilization. The first three are really about seeing how our businesses are investing in themselves. Are they increasing their footprints? Are they expanding where they can? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's physical space and by having building expansions, but it could be investments in their own business where we're capturing that through personal property. All of that in turn shows that, they are continuing to be strong and have a presence here. The last one, industrial space utilization. That's a key industry that, that we want to watch. And sort of, we have the ability to see and track the types of industrial space that we have available that's zoned correctly, that may be vacant or may be occupied, And so seeing what those opportunities are going to help us understand how we can further support existing businesses that may want to stay in this community. The last outcome for this strategy is increased quality job opportunities. So we would be looking to see, are we increasing the median income in Lewiston? Looking at the average wage per sector, the number of establishments here, and the number of employees. Any questions on this strategy?
I'm not seeing any hands raised, Misty.
Moving on to strategy 3, business attraction. So in order to look at how we would measure our success around business attraction, we've identified 2 specific outcomes. The first one being new business investment. See, looking at the number of new business licenses that are here in the city, and also looking at personal property. The reason personal property is here is because business licenses only captures a fraction of new businesses in the city. However, our personal property records will tell us additional new businesses that may have gone under our radar and come into the city and not been captured in another data source. And so this has been the most comprehensive list that we've been able to identify that's generated to help us determine new businesses within the community. So the second outcome that we were looking at with business attraction is we want a more productive tax base. Again, going back to personal property, building permits, industrial space utilization, and the growth in target sectors. If you remember from the economic development plan under the strategy, really it's focused on targeting specific 3 different sectors that will need to be identified that are growing in our city that have the ability to do additional outreach around these businesses. That's partly because with business attraction, this is one of the more costly strategies we can pursue as a city that oftentimes has lower success rates. So by being very strategic and trying to understand where we need to target our attraction efforts will help increase the probability of our success rates. So that's the reliance on the growth in our target sectors. Is there any questions on strategy 3?
Councilor Ray.
Thank you. My question is actually on strategy 2. It didn't get my hand up fast enough, so I apologize. I'm just looking at the supplemental materials that were provided to us. And can you just tell us what, I know what MDOL data stands for, Department of Labor. What is MSA?
Oh, that is our Metropolitan Statistical Area. That is a great question. So one of the reasons why we had the different sample sets of Lewiston specific and then looking at our MSA is we wanted to understand wage growth in the greater region as well as our city to see where do we compare to the rest of the area as well.
And how does that account for people who in either of these scenarios, they live here and work in a different town or metro area, or they work here and live in a different area?
Yeah, so looking at like average wage per sector will help us determine what sectors here the wages are for those jobs located here. The increased median income for Lewiston will help us determine what residents in Lewiston are producing for income. So it's
okay. Thank you.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mayor. I love this logic model, Misty. I really appreciate seeing, the outcomes and the strategies, and maybe this question kind of pertains to all of it, but I find myself just wondering, like, as you look at measurement of some of this and trying to establish baselines, I guess I'm wondering, like, what's the timeline for this? Because I suspect that as I'm looking through some of these outcomes in particular, like, very different world right now than pre-COVID. So wondering, like, what, if some thought has been given to that.
Absolutely. That's something that's been on our mind quite a bit. especially where we've been collecting baseline data. The event permitting is one that definitely this came up with, where we cannot look at 2020 data. So in our minds, 2020 is not going to exist on this. We're using 2019 as our baseline. And then when things resume, we will pick up from there. But it's not really fair to use that as a measurement when things have so drastically changed. So I think we're going to have to be adaptable and really apply more of an analysis to the data sets when we're reporting back to you guys. If we see certain things, unemployment rate is another important factor. We can look at the unemployment rate right now and it's approximately 10%, but that's given what's happened with COVID. Pre-COVID, it was around 3%, and that means a lot. That indicates a lot different things. So I think once we get past some of these economic uncertainties and things start to stay a little bit more consistent, we'll get a better sense of where we are. So where we can watch data now, we're trying to apply that analysis to it to determine what may be off and what might be more consistent. With the strategies themselves highlighted in the plan, you will see some of the things that we identified for this coming year to focus on, and that is specifically keeping in mind we're in the beginning of a recovery, and so those strategies need to be very sensitive to that recovery and focus on areas that make sense at this time.
Thank you.
And I think we're really fortunate, though, that we have a lot of institutional knowledge in the Economic Development Department. So even though we may not have data to support 2020, you folks will have probably a pretty good understanding of any new growth or lack of that our community will be seeing, and that's going to be important as well, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so carry on, Misty, please.
So strategy 4, workforce development. First outcome identified was balanced unemployment percentages. So really looking at the unemployment rate. And fortunately, this is one that DOL is generating on a monthly basis. So we can actually analyze that, and see where those waves are happening and what that means over a period of time, as opposed to just 1 month, which is really helpful with trying to understand where are we coming from and where are we headed. The next outcome is increased median income. So looking at median family income, median household income, and the median income by MSA. And so this is one of those areas that we mentioned that we want to evaluate different situations for people in Lewiston to understand how are our residents doing compared to the broader area. The next outcome is increased discretionary income. There are better data sources out there that we have not been able to access at this point to understand discretionary income, but one that we were able to identify was average weekly wage. So it's not just about, what is somebody's overall median income, but also, what percentage of that wage do they have that they're able to support things like restaurants and retail and some of our service establishments. And so by looking at the average weekly wage and how that may change for this area is one of the ways that we can start to understand that. The next outcome is increased residents with credentials of value. So here we have marked residents with a college degree and understanding what percentage of our population has access to some of the jobs that will require degrees or specifically specific credentials. Really getting down to the credentialing level is a challenge. So we have in an area that we want to further develop the number of Lewiston residents with credential of value. Right now, the existing data sets we have access to only tell us college degree, tells us partial degree, associates, bachelor's, master's, PhD. But a lot of jobs and a lot of good paying jobs around here really requires specific credentials that we don't have a data set that's capturing. But we have a lot of partners that are producing those data sets. And so one of the areas that we want to further investigate to see the feasibility of collecting the data of Lewiston residents that are producing those credentials at places like adult education, the community college, through the career center, things of that nature. So that's another we hope to be able to collect, but not yet. Are there any questions on workforce development metrics?
I don't see any hands raised.
Great. Community development. So the first outcome that we have is our increased housing choice. So things that we look to measure this are the median single family home price, monthly median sale price. That's also for single family as well as multifamilies. Affordability, there's an affordability index through Maine Housing that helps us understand based on incomes in this area and average rents, are people able to afford the housing options that are here in the community? Rental registration is another way to understand number of units that we have here. And new residential units by geography and building type. We want to understand what are the new housing units that are being offered and produced in this community. The next outcome is increased utilization of green spaces. So here we're looking to measure our city investment as well as event permits that are utilizing those green spaces. And the last outcome is a safe community. The one particular data source that we have for this is our crime rate, which is produced annually through our police department. Are there any questions on our last strategy, community development?
Councilor Ray.
Thank you. I am not sure what you mean under outcome, increased housing choice, new residential units by geography.
Yeah, we want to see where they're being built. So when we think about increased housing choices, are we just producing apartments, or are we producing single family homes? Are we just building in the downtown versus other areas of the city? So trying to understand what is happening where in the city and what those choices might be, because what we've learned about our community is that people want different options. And so we need to ensure that those options are available. And if they're not happening in certain areas of the city, we need to reassess what we're doing to try and make sure those options can be available.
Okay, so location and building type. Okay, thanks.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we go back just a moment to strategy 1 plus the final strategy here? And that involves the safe community, which has been a major part of what we've discussed since the council first got together at the start of the year. Looking at Lewiston, I think any town, downtown is center stage when it comes to image for the community. It tends to be that area where news picks up, be it good or be it bad, particularly be it bad. That will always rise to the top quicker than something good. And when it comes to image, I think it's very important to recognize that perception is reality. I suspect the mayor may join in with me on this, that the perception of those people that live, work, interface with downtown is very important. And I think that should be pursued aggressively when it comes to establishing an image of a safe community. The perception of the people that are there, particular, can impact the image tremendously. And if we don't have a good image, we don't have a safe downtown, no matter how safe it is. Thank you.
So I see Councilor Khalid raised her hand, but if you could give me one moment, because it's kind of the same subject that when I was looking at this originally, I was more concerned that we were focused on just the downtown when it came to community safety perceptions. And I'm glad, so in your very last presentation, I got the feeling more it's citywide that you're going to be looking at that crime data should be analyzed so that, you know, two reasons. One, I do want people to feel either whether you're downtown or in our suburbs or driving on main thoroughfares that this is a safe place to be. But two, I want businesses outside of the downtown to feel that as a community, it's important to us that they also are being represented through this metrics and this plan. And I'm sensing that that's important to you folks in economic development as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, good, thank you. Councilor Khalid.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the last slide, I think community development. So as we see here, I only see like housing and green space, but I'm thinking when I think about community development, I'm like one of my platform and one of my vision is, you know, a place to all our residents to come together and especially the youth to go out and like enjoy themselves. So I'm thinking more of like a recreational development. I don't know if that's an area you have been thinking about. I know it's a different department, but that's an area that we definitely need to focus on aggressively.
Mayor, if I can actually maybe help with a little bit of that response. We are absolutely on the same page, Councilor Khalid. We've actually just had some recent conversations with our recreation department and asking for plans that actually would complement exactly what you're talking about. Our intent is to actually, once those get some draft plans with that, would be to actually bring in our economic development department, bring in our police department. Just a similar process that we've done with this is bringing in multiple departments on these types of plans. So we're getting those different perspectives and making sure that they're all kind of weaving together and coming together collectively. So we're working on that, and I expect that hopefully not too distant future, we'll be able to present a similar plan on recreation to the City Council.
And if I could just add to that, and we're also going to include the school department in this conversation because we believe, you know, the school has so many buildings and gyms and that they truly are an asset when it comes to recreation in our community for our youth. So.
Absolutely. And I would further add on to that we did receive that feedback about especially youth program being a large component of the community development, especially around creating a safe community. That did make the final plan. We just didn't have a clear metric that we could report out on. But I think as Lincoln mentioned in the beginning, that this is a starting point for us. And as we further flesh out this plan and are actually implementing it, that there are areas that we need to investigate more and determine what we can be measuring for other data sources that we might not have been aware of. So I hope that this is one we can revisit as some of these other plans are coming to fruition too.
Link, did you have something to add? All right, thank you. Councilor Wright.
Thank you. So just as we're talking about different metrics for housing as well, one thing that pops into my mind is housing availability by age range as well. So senior housing in the community and its utilization, I think that plays into a metric as well, as we are trying to be a more age-friendly community as well.
Okay.
Any other questions on the community development strategy?
I don't see any other hands raised.
We're reporting to council, which I'm sure that you're very curious about and want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of how this will work. Our department's looking at doing biannual reports of the metrics back to you. We originally had looked for something that would be more readily available to you, but just based on the amount of time that it was taking to generate this data, as well as when data sources would be available, really biannually felt like it would be more meaningful of an analysis for the council to hear. And what that looks like is a complete annual report of all metrics and analysis of the progress. So not just the data points, but really diving into what are we seeing and why might we be seeing those changes, and trying to understand different pressures that might be pushing the data in one direction or another, as well as what were we able to accomplish through our plan. The other one would be in between those annual reports, a 6-month update on targets, the progress of each target, as well as those biannual metrics that are available on a more ready basis. Part of that would also be an update on our progress internally with some of these activities that we are trying to achieve. So our goal is to be in front of you formally twice a year. As other developments happen, we of course would keep you informed, but really trying to formalize twice a year when this could happen. Our first visit back to you would likely be in March, I believe was our target, to try and do some follow-up with you guys, and then coming back to you around September. Fall and spring. Part of those discussions would really be what's working, what's not working, so you can have an understanding. Some of these strategies, it's really going to take a longer time to determine if we're achieving the results we are hoping, but some of them will be able to determine whether or not that's happening. Building of additional data systems, because internally especially, we don't have consistent ways to collect some of the data that we had intended or would be more meaningful. It's going to take us some time to build out those data systems and the ways that we collect that information. A lot of work has already happened to be able to generate that and setting up the tools to make sure that those can be efficiently generated. But again, it's going to take us a few more months to work with other departments to get that. So also another goal that we're keeping in mind is as we do this data collection, we don't want to be a burden to other departments and add more work to them. So if we can be proactive now and set these things up, we will be more efficient and successful in the future. Another tool we're looking at is the use of GIS analysis for helping achieve some of these efficiencies. So we've been working with Jim Ward on setting up some of these tools so that we can, especially geographically, look at area, having a downtown strategy. It's time consuming to sort through data sets to try and identify what's in the downtown, what's not in the downtown. But we've been able to set things up to start to measure some of those data sources so that we can more efficiently pull that data for a specific area and be able to report on those downtown specific metrics. This is a rough draft of what we would be looking at. Specific to the downtown strategy, we would be looking at the purple and the green area. We have them broken up. In this, and what you're seeing here is a compilation of building permit investments that happened in the downtown in 2019. So the purple area is our Lisbon and Main Street area, and the Riverfront Island area is in green, and that specific area follows the boundaries of the Riverfront Island Master Plan study area. The tree streets are also indicated in here because we're setting up this template. That's something in the future that we'll have to measure for the Choice Neighborhoods work. So we just produced it as part of this trial run. But really, the downtown strategies will be specific to the purple and green area. So through here, we were able to quickly produce where investment happened in 2019. So in the Riverfront area, you can see the Bates Mill stands out. That's because there was a couple big projects that happened for renovation of office spaces like Grand Rounds. And And through that, we're also able to do a total valuation of what was invested in that one specific area. So you see just under $7 million was invested in the riverfront area in 2019. This is really helpful when we look at some of the plans that we have produced, and especially where we are making investments with city infrastructure to understand what our return on investment is. So this is already a tool that we've started to look at, wanting to place, our city investments in to see, where have we placed, made investments, and where's the private investment following? So are they correlated? Are we seeing direct results? Things like that. So there's a lot we can do at GIS, and we're excited to try and see how we can take multiple data sources to get a more comprehensive understanding of this, what's happening in these areas. So that is what I have for you tonight with the metrics. Again, this is our starting point where we feel confident that we can have measurable results for you to help determine the progress that we're making in the community and how the community is changing in areas that have been identified as important to growing our economy. We've received some feedback from different partners wanting to dive more into some of these data sets, and they definitely have value, and we're going to continue to explore them. And it's a matter of setting up that internal infrastructure and what our capabilities are. So I think that while this is our baseline of what we intend to offer with our reporting out, hopefully there will be revisions that further add value to this. Are there any additional questions?
So if we could drop your screen, Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. The vibe I got, at least, from the beginning part, is that it does seem like this is very time consuming. And there's a lot of data that it looks like you guys are collecting. Does it seem necessary to collect all of that? And are you sure that you're going to be able to actually do something with all of that data that you collect?
Yes, that's a great question. What we presented in the final plan is what we feel confident that we can generate efficiently, and where we've highlighted some areas that need further development. That's going to take another, some additional time to either build out so that it is more efficient, or just a further investigation of whether or not it is viable with our staff resources that we have.
Okay. Yeah, just the concern I have is I don't want to, overwhelm you guys and just give us data that we end up not even be able, to do anything with it.
We appreciate that. And I think one of the things that as we start to do the first few report outs, we may have recommendations to remove some data sets that are just not generating, the information that we had hoped that it would, and just doesn't make sense to continue to include. So.
And Councilor Jensen, that's exactly, it's always been my concern with metrics. They're important, they're necessary, but we got real work to do. So reporting out versus getting the work done, it's that balance. So we'll find out as we go, but thank you for sharing that. I would have said that if you had, so thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you guys are just figuring this out too for the first time. So it's, I know it's probably some learning process too, figuring out what you want to do. So I definitely understand. It was a great presentation, by the way. So before I forget to say that, I do want to mention that. The question I have is, honestly, I could probably ask this to every department, but could future department language really distinguish between the three parts of the downtown? Like the map you showed was, phenomenal. So just maybe in like future language, try to, instead of just saying downtown, go like the Tree Streets neighborhood, Riverfront Island, or like business district. Just something I would suggest too in talking with business owners. They kind of would prefer that there was more distinguished areas. And honestly, the Tree Street's not the same as the riverfront. So that's just always been kind of like a pet peeve, something I really want to work on as a counselor. So I'm not sure if my colleagues have any thoughts on that, but that's something that's been on my mind. So I wanted to share that, and thank you.
Absolutely.
I agree with that as well. I think that the business district is really important to separate. Councilor, anything else, Councilor Jensen? Okay, Councilor Pettengill.
Thank you. And thank you, Lincoln and Misty and everybody in the department for putting this together. And I know I had really pushed for metrics, and I appreciate all the time taken to really dive in and see what's workable and what can be done. But talking about the metrics, I think it's important to note that the efficiency, it is important to be able to be efficient from a reporting standpoint as well as a collection standpoint as well, because they work hand in hand. And then the fall and spring presentations I think are fantastic. And then something to think about as it goes on, because it seems like we're developing all this right now, is something that's easily digestible in a scorecard, both for city council, staff, and residents, and anybody looking to do business with us here as well. Thank you for the hard work. I can't imagine how not easy this was. And great presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councilor Ray.
I just want to second a couple of the thoughts that already came out. Councilor Jensen's kind of three distinctions between the downtown areas is something we hear all the time from the business owners in the area, as well as the folks down by the mill. And then Councilor Pettengill's idea of some sort of scorecard or dashboard. I think that's becoming a way that we consume information, especially, if that's something we can give out to real estate agents or to businesses that are looking at moving here. Just easily digestible ways of consuming this information, because this is all wonderful and I think that the right level of detail for us, but then how does the public consume it?
Those are great suggestions.
And I'd like to add, well, I have a question, and then I just want to add this, and I almost hate to, but I just think it's important for everyone here to acknowledge it. Part of the reason why I think the downtown business wants that separation is because some of the issues that are occurring outside of that area that get associated with them. So I think that's why when we look at crime, law enforcement strategies around economic development, it's really important that the tree streets be a focus of how do we get a community style in policing occurring in that area. And we have an example of it working right in our downtown business district with that footbeat officer. We somehow have to get that neighborhood believing that the officers are focused on community policing, and that means sometimes being out of a car and meeting with the residents of that area and hearing their concerns. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then I have just a quick question on the omnibus district. I noticed here, and it's more about the plan, but I noticed here that it states, what the funds will be used for, but I didn't see improvements as part of that potential funding. So in letter D, we talk about beautification and infrastructure. Can that funding for things like that be also part of the TIF district?
Yeah, I would think that when we create that TIF, we will look at what makes sense that's allowed under the state. And it's always that balance between needing general fund revenues and being able to shelter how we use that money from all of the additional costs and aid from the state that we receive. So anything that we would be spending money on anyway, it makes sense. If it's allowed, we'll write it in. And it's really the council's decision at the time.
Okay, and does that have to be documented in the plan or in the actual approval process of the district? Okay.
Yeah, it is. And it sort of depends. In the past, you could simply reference the statute, and then there were a whole pile of things that applied. That was back when days were a little bit easier and softer at the state. We've got a new administration at this point, so we've had a handful of TIFs, and Misty and Heidi have really been the ones working mostly. I don't think they're quite as strident as they once were, but you really should still articulate, here's how we're going to use the dollars. Okay. And I think there's some flexibility as far as the amounts and whatnot, but you should get it. If you don't include it in it when you write it up, you're not allowed to use it.
All right. Thank you. And I'll just echo what everybody else says, but I'm impressed from start to finish as we went through this process. So thank Lincoln, please thank everybody in your department, and we really appreciate the cooperation and energy thrown at this.
Well, yeah, my hat's off to Misty and Heidi. I mean, they really, all these metrics is all their work. So
Right.
well done.
Right. Thank you. So item B is status and future improvements to the parking garage control system. We have about 9 minutes before the start of our council meeting. So I guess I'll turn to the city administrator on what your thoughts on what we do with this.
Well, I think Dale, it could get us started on this, and if we have to, always continue the workshop after the meeting, we can certainly do that. I would encourage probably to take the time and see if we can't, get you caught up to speed in a 10-minute time frame here.
Okay. Lots of agenda items and 2 executive sessions at the end, so we'll have to try to keep that in mind. So Dale, with that, go ahead.
Be quick, Dale.
Absolutely, we will. I think we can get through this. This is really an update. Parking is a very broader, especially in-town business district parking is a very broad issue that will be back to council with a lot more time. So we're going to just focus on one area, and that's really the parking garages today. But this fall, we're going to come back with a much more robust discussion about parking in general and parking strategies, picking up from the last council. In 2018 and 19, we performed 2 studies on parking in the business district. One was on-street parking focused with a little bit of garage, but then we also did another study on how our parking garages, our revenue tracking system was working. We got a series of improvements, recommendations, but we also got from that our systems were nearing their end of their service life. And at the time they projected 3 or 4 years, and we're 2 years in. This spring, about the time COVID hit, the parking gate system, the revenue tracking system began to fail. And it was failing at such a regularity that we finally opened the gates in mid-June. And they've been open since. And it really because it was a burden to our customers down there. So the gates have been open. There are some revenue implications that Heather can talk about in a moment, both because the gates are open, but also because parking utilization is way down. If you go to most of the garages, most of the time, they're about a quarter full most days. One of the unfortunate parts is the system that we had was never reliable for us to get any metric data. Back to the whole conversation we just had on the utilization, how many people went in, how many people went out, and it was partly due to that reliability issue. So what we would like to do, like I said, we're going to come back with a very robust discussion about parking in general in the business district and the downtown business district. But in the meantime, we're kind of headed down a road to do a couple things. First, we want to send out a letter in our next billing cycle to notify our patrons, our permit holders of what we're doing. One, to improve the quality of the garages, that letter's in your packet, to improve the safety in the garages, including the foot patrol and some other patrols going through periodically that the mayor talked about earlier. And we want to hire a consultant to really take a look at our garages and those metering systems, evaluate those. I suspect they're the vast majority of that, other than some of the improvements we made, which we targeted on things that could be utilized in the next, like communication wiring and fiber optics. But really look at those systems and recommend a new system for us that'll do a couple things. One, be relatively seamless with billing. Make sure we can get the metrics on utilization of the garages and when they're utilized and how they're utilized and occupancy. And then, but to really have a system that also can integrate with whatever that next strategy is that we're going to be talking about later this winter for parking in general. As you know, we're all still working on the on-street parking off the old meter system, which is antiquated. In fact, we're cannibalizing meters as we remove them to repair other meters because we can't get parts. So the longevity of that is in question, plus just the modernization of it. Most people don't carry actual cash anymore. So So that's kind of our next step, is really to initiate a consultant. There's a draft scope. I know I don't have much time, but there's a draft scope in your package of the kind of considerations that we'll put together for that consultant. Get him on board, him, her, the entity on board, and really begin to understand what we need to install. We also have a couple of items, parking items, that are either left over from previous studies, or we were going to build a surface lot down in Oxford on Oxford Street prior to COVID to accommodate some of the future mill development. Some of those things really don't need to happen this year. So we do have some funding that we would come back to you at some point and say, we would like to transfer from these accounts into an account so that we could reestablish some of those parking systems in some priority order. That's about $400,000 in those accounts. So that's a very quick overview, given we have a short amount of time for questions.
And Dale, are you looking?
Sorry, that was a bit rushed.
Yeah, Dale, are you looking for kind of like a thumbs up on the consultant, or will that come before us in an agenda item?
I think we'd like a thumbs up on the consultant. The reason being, Mayor, is we want to, yeah.
All right, hold on a sec. Let's see. Let's do the thumbs up if everybody's supportive of that. So in general, I think there's support for moving forward with that. And go ahead and finish up, Dale. And
I think just the reason being, we have an opportunity to make those repairs now while occupancy is way down. And as we come out of this in the spring, our hope would be, however many of the garages we can upgrade at that time, we would have upgraded. At the same time, we're having the conversation about the broader parking issue. So the reason we're rushing for the consultant is really to take advantage of this winter to get things in place before spring comes, and hopefully as our recovery continues.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ray.
Thank you. So I want to move forward with all of this, of course, but I feel like we've already done the study. And so I don't really totally understand why they need to evaluate the garages and the gate and the payment systems again. Is that just for their own base knowledge for when they make a recommendation? It's like, I don't want to wait for that to happen personally. I'm like, let's just go.
So I'm sorry I rushed through that, and I'm sure Dennis will chime in again. We did a study, and it was primarily the study for the overall parking system was mostly on-street parking. They paid a little bit of attention at the last minute to the parking garages. What they really didn't look at, and what we really need advice on, is what hardware. What's the current schemes for collecting revenue and metering occupancy, and what are those systems, and how would they integrate with future systems? So this is much more focused. It's a very short study. It's really giving us advice on when we spec out the hardware that goes in the garage, how it interacts with our building systems. What should those specifications be? So it's much, much more pointed than the previous study.
Okay, thank you for reassuring me of that. And then the second question is related. Do we anticipate the foot patrol to continue through the winter and then be brought back every spring to summer? I think it's gone exceptionally well so far based on all the feedback I've heard, but I just want to know about the sustainability of that as a portion.
So the intent right now for the foreseeable future is that foot patrol, I spoke with the chief, and that is going to continue. Obviously extreme weather, winter conditions, and that will reassess in certain times and that, but yes, that's the intent. In terms of how far into the spring or into 2021, I don't have a specified timeline with the chief yet, but there's no intent to stop that anytime in the near future. I can say that.
So you do expect through the winter, other than storms or extreme cold, that type of stuff? I mean, yeah.
I think I would encourage us to probably get a formal update in terms of timeline from the chief, but that's certainly been the discussions up to this point. So.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor Wright? Okay, thank you. Councilor Jensen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions. Do we really think that we could get everything ready for next summer? Is that a realistic goal that we're kind of looking at and really pushing for? And then also, what would be the cost of the consultancy?
So for the garages, and that's what we're focused on tonight, we'll come back for the broader later, it is very much my hope that we would have within a couple months, recommendations on the hardware and them writing the specifications for us. And we could bid that early in the early in the winter, so that we'd have something constructed. It's really going to depend on consultants and contractors and their timing, and a lot of that stuff is stressed right now, but that is very much our hope. Like I said, we have about $400,000 we would propose to you to transfer into this effort. I think an original estimate that that Dennis may have iterated to me was around $600,000 for all of the garages at one point. So our hope is we could certainly get the majority of them done in some priority order by spring. That would be very much our goal if we can get the contractors and consultants on board to do such a thing. The cost of the consultant, I'm not sure of. I'm hoping tens of thousands, not more.
Yeah, you didn't come through very good. Can you say that again, Dan?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know the cost of the consultant. I would assume it would be in low tens of thousands. I'm hoping we could do something for fairly cheaply, because we're really looking for recommendations, writing a specification. Where some costs might come incurred is I think we're going to ask that consultant to maybe stay on board once the hardware is installed and running, to maintain it and help us make sure that that becomes seamless with our billing systems and all of those things, all of the issues we've had in the past. But I'll certainly be able to report back once we put the RFP out.
Okay, that sounds reasonable to me. Just, counselor, have to ask that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of those things we got to do as an investment, so I understand and I'm supportive.
Okay, any other questions or comments reference to this workshop item? Okay, seeing none, we'll shift over. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 6th City Council meeting. This session will be conducted remotely, and council members will only participate electronically. For those viewing online, please ensure that you join this meeting using the following website, www.lewistonmaine.gov/2020cc. And if by chance you've joined this meeting using any other link, we ask that we encourage that you log out and then rejoin the meeting using that web address. Public comment on any item appearing on the agenda may be sent to public comment at lewistonmaine.gov prior to or during the meeting, and all comments received would be forwarded to the City Council. Members of the public who are logged into this meeting online can make a comment when invited to do so by raising your hand button in the lower center of your screen. Once that you are acknowledged, their microphones would be unmuted and then they would be invited to make a brief comment. Speakers will also need to be sure to unmute their mics as well before making comments. And councilors, of course, are asked to raise their hand. With that said, City Clerk, if you could please call the roll for attendance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor from Ward 1?
Present.
Ward 2?
Here.
Ward 3?
Present.
Ward 4?
Present.
Ward 5?
Present.
Ward 6?
Present.
Ward 7?
Present.
Also present this evening for this council meeting is Mayor Kayer, City Administrator Dote, Deputy City Administrator Dowdy, Finance Director Heather Hunter, and myself as the City Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And so the first item is a presentation of the Spirit of America Award. And I believe Mr. DeWitt is in the attendees, so if we could bring him in.
Should be on his way.
Hello, Mr. DeWitt, can you hear me? If you could unmute yourself.
There he is.
And you just have to unmute yourself. And let me see if I can. Can we unmute him?
I can ask him to,
Here.
but I.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Hi,
Hello.
hello, sir. How are you?
Good, and you all too.
Very good, thank you. Welcome to the City Council meeting. As you're aware, the LA Veterans Council was chosen by the City Council to receive the Spirit of America 2020 recognition. So first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to your organization for that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and a couple of things. I have a letter here from Senator Collins that's dated October 6th, and we'll make sure that your organization receives that if you haven't already. Once we present you with that beautiful award that you can hang within the LA Veterans Council offices. Your organization is just so incredibly important to our community, and it's amazing what a group of veterans can do in a city that recognizes the service and sacrifices of the veterans here. Just a couple of things that I just want to bring up. Every year, you folks are sponsors of the Memorial Day Parade and the accompanying ceremony. You sponsor musical tributes and pass and review at the Lewiston Armory on Veterans Day, and I cannot speak highly enough of what you folks have done to that Veterans Park. Because you know and I know municipalities, although they have good intentions, they never invest in areas like that the way we should. And just, I know you're such a staunch fundraiser and advocate for your organization, and I personally as mayor would like to thank you, and I know I can speak for the city council here in thanking you for all the work that you folks do for our community.
Well, on behalf of all the members of the LNA Veterans Council, I can't thank the city enough for all the support you've given us over the many years. And with that, we'd also like to thank the community members, and especially give a shout out to Del Gendron. Without him, we wouldn't be where we are today. But thank the community for your support of veterans issues.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, if you wouldn't mind, the city would be greatly remiss if we did not mention and bring to light and recognition the support of the Veterans Council for the placement of flags at the grave sites for Memorial Day. That became a state law in 2001, and we reached out to the coordinator of the council at that time, which I believe was Bert Dutil, and the council immediately said, absolutely, we are happy to do it. Give us your largest location, which we did, which was St. Peter's Cemetery with 4,000 stones. And Jerry has been the coordinator of that effort for the past several years. And to say that they undertake it with military precision is not a joke. They attack that the best way they can. They have the volunteers go out in a grid style format and cover the 4,000 graves and get it done in a couple of hours on a Saturday, which is just an absolute amazement. And it's such a great tribute to the organization and to the city and the community and to the deceased veterans up there. So really, on behalf of the city, we didn't want to forget that wonderful example that the council has done for the community for almost 20 years. So Jerry, thank you so much.
We couldn't do it without the volunteers of the community coming out that day. And we still get Bert out there too.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Madam Clerk, for making note of that. Are there any other comments or that any councilors would like to make? Hopefully I stated enough. And so, Mr. DeWitt, thank you so much. And Dottie will be in touch with you. And I'm also going to ask staff to make sure we get a nice frame for that award.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Thank you. And have a good evening. Okay. Okay. It's always nice to start a council meeting with a presentation or award. So we don't get to do that very often as a council. Moving on to an update on city actions regarding COVID-19. I think Dale's gonna take that.
Yep, I think it's status quo at City Hall. We're continuing to review our our policies here and throughout the departments. We're maintaining our mask requirement at City Hall for both us and strongly suggesting it for patrons. The governor did put out some additional guidance this afternoon, and we just came out later this afternoon, and we haven't had a chance to review that, so we will be reviewing that tonight and discussing those implications tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Okay, thank you. And I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of September 15th and September 29th, 2020.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second the motion.
Okay, moved by Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor Jensen. If there's no questions or comments, call the roll, please.
Thank you. I think Councilor Ray has a
Councilor
question.
Ray.
I plan to abstain, having not been able to read the minutes in time. Could we get those a little earlier? I already had a meeting on my calendar. I apologize for that.
No, that's fine. We absolutely can. Yes, thank you, Councilor.
Okay, anything else? Okay, call the roll.
Councilor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3 is abstaining, and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We're now at the public comment period. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. A total of 3 minutes will be allowed per speaker with a maximum of 15 minutes. Is there anyone present who would like to make public comment? Okay, and we have one person to bring in, and I think, so this is Mr. Burgess, and I previously sent to the council a small packet of information. Mr. Burgess, can you hear me?
I can, sir.
All right. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. The packet is self-explanatory, and I hope the councilors review it. It's in regards to the Wellness Mobile and our great work here in the city. On average, we have 5,000 to 6,000 resource bags that we stuff and prepare, along with books and other literature, and we get those out to members of the community through our outreach efforts. In past summers, I know the mayor and other city councilors have attended some of the movies in the park and safety nights out and various events like that, touch a truck, trunk or treats and things like that. So we're very open and very in the public, handing out these materials, making sure that folks have them. And some of the benefits that we're starting to see after 5 years of hard work in the community, I think I mentioned this to the mayor in our meeting. We had 2 young men from the African community come forward and share with me at the Pettingill Park how their literature and reading the comic books and the bookmarks and listening to me speak has turned the cheek, so to speak. They were involved in fighting and they were involved in bullying. And now, because they read the materials and heard us speak, they no longer do that. And they go around and encourage the other kids in the downtown area to also stop as well. When we were at the public night out with Officer Joe, we actually saw them talking to other boys saying, hey, it's not the kind of event that you roughhouse or you should be, goofing off like that and picking on other people. So we're starting to see the ripple in the pond, so to speak, and we're starting to see great work come to fruition. We've helped the homeless, we help veterans. As the Gold Star brother, I attend many meetings and conferences, and so we are certified to respond to folks in need, folks in crisis, and we will continue that great work throughout the year and many years to come, I'm sure.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor, and the council.
All right, and we appreciate the good work you do in our community. All right, roll call votes.
All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Counselor of Ward 5.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 1, please.
Item number 1, public hearing on new applications for a liquor license and a special amusement permit for Lewiston Urban Civic Center Enterprises, LLC, doing business as Furlan Management Colisée, LLC, at 190 Birch Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve new applications for a liquor license and a special amusement permit for Lewiston Urban Civic Center Enterprises, LLC, doing business as Furlan Management Colisée, LLC, at 190 Birch Street.
So
Okay.
moved.
I'm sorry, so that was moved by Councilor Jensen?
Yep.
All right, and everything blended together on my end. I just need another second from the first.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor Ray. With that, I'll open the public hearing, and while we're checking for any input, is there any questions or comments from the council? Okay. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. And still none, so I will close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thank you. Agenda item number 2, please.
Item number 2, public hearing on new applications for a liquor license and a special amusement permit for King of Pins Bowling and Family Entertainment Center Incorporated, doing business as King of Pins, 24 Mollison Way. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve new applications for a liquor license and a special amusement permit for King of Pins Bowling and Family Entertainment Center Incorporated, doing business as King of Pins, 24 Mollison Way.
So move.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor LaJoy, seconded by Councilor Jensen. And with that, I'll open the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the council while we're waiting to see if anyone raises their hand? Okay, seeing none. And I do not see any public raising their hand. Still seeing none. I'll close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Council from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, please.
Item number 3, public hearing on new applications for a liquor license and a special amusement permit for the Carriage House Plus, 1119 Lisbon Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve new applications for a liquor license and a special amusement permit for the Carriage House Plus located at 1119 Lisbon Street.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moved by Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Jelinas. With that, I'll open up the public hearing. And are there any comments or questions from the council? Seeing none. I'm not seeing any hands raised in the attendees. Still seeing none. I'll close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Council from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing on an application for an extension of liquor license on premise for La Paz Temps Incorporated, 45 Cedar Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve an extension of liquor license on premise for La Paz Temps Incorporated, 45 Cedar Street.
Need a
So
mo-
moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. And with that, I'll open the public hearing. And while we wait, are there any comments or questions from the council? Okay, seeing none. Not seeing any requests through the attendees. Still seeing none. I'll close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5, please.
Item number 5, public hearing on the renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for Fast Breaks Incorporated, 1465 Lisbon Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to Fast Breaks Incorporated, 1465 Lisbon Street.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, so let me see. That was way too many at the same time. Councilor Jelinas moved, I believe, and I'll give the second to Councilor Clement, if that works.
Works for me.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing and turn it over to councilors for a moment while we wait. Any questions or comments from the council? Okay, seeing none. I'm not seeing any attendees' hands raised. I have a memo from an attorney today that said I should open it up and count to 5. So that's what I'm doing. I'll start doing that for public hearing. So anyway, not seeing any public comment. I'll close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, please.
Item number 6, public hearing on the renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for Lewiston Recreation Division, 65 Central Avenue. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to Lewiston Recreation Division, 65 Central Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Pettingill. And with that, I'll open the public hearing. In the meantime, any questions or comments from the council? Okay, seeing none. I see no hands raised in the attendees. Still seeing none. I'll close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, please.
Item number 7, public hearing on the renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for Agora Grand Event Center, 220 Bates Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to Agora Grand Event Center, 220 Bates Street.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Seconded, moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. With that, I'll open the public hearing. And while we wait, any questions or comments from the council? Okay, not seeing any hands raised at this point. Okay, seeing no public comments, I'll close the public hearing and call the roll, please.
Council from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. We're at 8, right?
Yes.
All right, agenda item number 8, please.
Public hearing on an application for a business license renewal for Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated for an outpatient addiction treatment clinic at 18 Mollison Way. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to conduct a public hearing to receive citizen input and comment regarding the application submitted by Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated for renewal of their business license to operate an outpatient addiction treatment clinic at 18 Mollison Way in Lewiston. It doesn't need a motion, Mr. Mayor. You can simply open the public hearing.
Okay, the public hearing is now open. And I'm not seeing any raised hands from attendees. Okay, still seeing none. I'll close the public hearing. If you could continue on, Madam Clerk.
Sure. The requested action is to approve the license for an outpatient addiction treatment clinic for Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated to operate a clinic at 18 Mollison Way, Lewiston, subject to the attached conditions.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor Khalid. Questions or comments? Councilor Jelinas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really a question about the public hearing. Just wondering, Madam Clerk, was that something that was requested, or is that just protocol?
It's required in our city code of ordinances that we have a public hearing prior to the issuance of this type of business license.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none to the public. Seeing none back to the council. Call the roll.
Councilor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 9, please. And I believe we're bringing in, I have David listed here, but we may also be bringing in Doug.
Item number 9, public hearing and final passage to adopt zoning and land use code map and text amendments in support of the revised site plan review and design guidelines and the Design Lewiston project. Requested action to approve final passage of the listed map and text amendments to the zoning and land use code and map.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a move by Councilor Joy and seconded by Councilor Jensen. With that, Doug or Dave, whoever wants to give a very brief presentation on this. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Kayer and council members. Excuse me. Yeah, we had a first reading with you on September 1st, and there were 3 major items on that agenda, same as tonight. A series of amendments to the zoning ordinance that would support the Design Lewiston site plan review design guidelines. The second part was a zoning map amendment for a zone change in the Tree Street area that would unify the Tree Street area into one downtown residential type zoning. And then the other one would be a zoning map amendment to implement an overlay district for the design district. And so those were presented to you on September 1st. Prior to your meeting on September 15th, we had received some communication from the city attorney recommending that we take a look at language we had put in there on modifications. We were striving to incorporate flexibility any way we could, but based on recommendations from the city attorney, we asked for postponement, continuation at the September 15th meeting. Since that time, we went through the entire zoning ordinance with a fine-tooth comb, looking for any references to modifications, and removed those, and instead added additional language that would strengthen and support state law on variances. So those are the changes that were made since the September 1st meeting, excuse me. So we come to you tonight with basically the same series of actions that we'd like you to support and vote on tonight. And in our opinion, these changes are de minimis, they're minor, and they don't make any significant impact into the overall thrust of what the Design Lewiston project is about. And I think at the September 1st meeting, I gave you a much more information about the benefits and all those things. So I don't think that might not be necessary tonight. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have or give you any more information if you'd like.
All right, thank you. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing portion. And then I'll turn it over to the council after we see if there's any comments from the public. Okay, so the public hearing is opened. If there's anyone that would like to make comments on this matter. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the council. Any questions or comments from the council? Okay, seeing none, call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 10, please.
Item number 10, public hearing and first passage to amend the land use code and map to rezone properties along Ash Street, Blake Street, Bartlett Street, College Street, Oak Street, and Jack Court from downtown residential to Centerville. Requested action to approve first passage of the proposed amendment to the land use code and map regarding the rezoning of properties along Ash Street, Blake Street, Bartlett Street, College Street, Oak Street, and Jack Court from downtown residential to Centerville, and to continue the public hearing for final passage to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Jensen. And David, are you presenting on this?
I will let Doug go. He's doing well.
All right.
One for one. Let's see how we do here. Thank you, Mayor Kayer and the council members. So going back a little ways, the staff made a presentation to you on August 11th to present the what you have before you tonight, which again is a zone change from the downtown residential zoning district to Centerville. The initial request came from the Lewiston Housing Authority, specifically for the property at 70 Blake Street, looking to put in some additional housing development units there, but the zoning at the time of downtown residential would not allow the density that they were looking for. And as a result, we started discussing a contract rezoning from downtown residential to Centerville, which would allow greater density and give the opportunity for the housing authority to do their development. As the staff continued their discussion and evaluation of this contract rezoning for one property, we looked and evaluated the possibility of expanding the zone change to a larger area. And so we got support for that. Some of the benefits of that, we discovered that there were a number of non-conforming properties, especially in the Oak Street, Blake Street, Jack Court area, that the zone change to Centerville would remove those non-conformities. And we also saw the opportunity for redevelopment that the Centerville zoning would provide, not only to that neighborhood area, but also to the other properties that are included now in this zone change. So I do have a map if you need to see it, but it was presented, included in your packet. But that's the general gist of it. And the short version, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. And we think it's a good thing, not only for the housing authority, it supports the Tree Street area as well in bringing in more density to the downtown area. But again, I think it's important to look at redevelopment opportunities for our downtown as well. So again, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll open the public hearing. And I noticed we have at least one attendee who's calling in by phone. So I just want to remind anyone who's calling in by phone who might want to make a public comment, they just need to push *9. Is that correct?
I believe it's *9. *6 will mute and unmute them, and I believe *9 is the other one, and Heather's nodding, so thank you.
Okay. So *6 you said would unmute them, and *9 would raise their hand. Is that?
Yes, thank you, Heather. Yes.
All right, thank you. Just for general information. So public hearing is now open. Quick check with the councilors. Any questions or comments? Okay. And to the public, for the public hearing, any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Questions or comments? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Ward 4?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thank you. And so I just need one moment, councilors. The city attorney's here with me, so just give me one moment. Okay, agenda item number 11, please.
Number 11, condemnation hearing for the building located at 97 Sabata Street. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to conduct a hearing to determine if the building located at 97 Sabata Street has met the dangerous building statutes as defined in Title 17, Section 2851 et al.
And then the other item will be after that hearing, if any, right?
Yes.
Correct, thank you.
Thank you.
So I just have a quick opening statement in reference to this condemnation hearing. We are meeting here this evening to conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure at 97 Sabata Street is a nuisance or dangerous building within the meaning of the applicable main statute found in Section 2851 of Title 17 of the remain but revised statute, and whether the structure poses a serious threat to public health and safety within the meaning of Section 2856 of that title and must be secured. If the council determines that the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building, it will then determine what actions the property owner must take. Before we proceed, I will note that the city attorney, Michael Carey, is taking part in this hearing in an office adjacent to me. And if for some reason I mute my audio or turn off the video, it is to confer with him. Under Section 2851, a structure or any part thereof is a nuisance or a dangerous building if it is structurally unsafe, unstable, unsanitary, constitutes a fire hazard, is unsuitable or improper for use of occupancy to which it is put, constitutes a hazard to health or safety because of the inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, or abandonment, or is otherwise dangerous to life or property. Under Section 2856, a municipality has the right to secure buildings that pose a serious threat to the public health and safety. These are the standards that we will use to decide whether the structure is a nuisance or a dangerous building and must be secured. Before we start, I have a question for the city council members. The building located at 97 Sabata Street is owned by Jennifer Sermana, and there are additional parties of interest are the Bank of America, Nation One Mortgage Company, Williamton Savings Fund Society, doing business as Christina Trust, not in its individual capacity, but solely for BCAT 2014-4TT. I must now ask the city council members if they know the owner or any party in interest or have knowledge about this matter That means that you could not fairly or impartially hear the facts and decide the matter based on evidence presented you at the hearing. And I would ask the clerk just to go through each individual counselor, please.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Counselor from Ward 1.
So what am I supposed to be saying? That I don't know this?
That you don't, right, that you have no connection with these folks, or there's nothing about any knowledge that you have that would not allow you to be fair and impartial.
No connection.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ward 2.
No connection.
Thank you. Ward 3.
No connection.
You. Ward 5. I'm sorry, Ward 4. Sorry.
No connections.
Great, thank you, Counselor. Ward 5.
No.
Thank you. Ward 6.
No connections whatsoever. I do have a question for the chair once we've gone through the roll, however.
Thank you. And Ward 7.
No connection.
Great, thank you. All set, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Clement.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor, as to the burden of proof in this hearing. Is it a preponderance?
Stand by, I'm looking in the other room. All right, so why don't I bring you in, actually? Yeah. There we go. So I just brought in our attorney, Mike Carey, and go ahead, Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Counselor, the standard is a statutory standard, and that's what the mayor just read. There's not a burden of proof per se, but it's whether or not you believe it meets that statutory standard that has 5 different parts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So next I will ask for representatives of the parties in interest to introduce themselves, including your name, address, and position. If you are a party of interest, I would ask that you either raise your hand, and if you're here by telephone, you would have to use the *6 or *9. So is the owner of 97 Sabata Street present?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, actually, I'm not the owner. My name is Carrie Folsom. I'm the attorney for Bank of America, Wilmington Savings Fund, and Nation One.
Okay, thank you. If you could just mute yourself for 1 second and we'll be with you in just a moment. Thank you, Attorney Folsom. All right, so I'll ask one more time if the owner of 97 Sabata Street is present. Okay, and with that, councilors, if you could just stand by 1 second. Okay, with the owner not being present, then I'll turn this over to Attorney Carey briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to explain for the council the status with service on the owner. Service was attempted at 3 different addresses. On August 20th of this year, Ms. Cremona indicated that her address was 81 East Avenue in Lewiston, apartment 8, when she registered a vehicle at that address. The next day, she registered a second vehicle at the same address. On September 29th, 2020, that apartment was vacant when the sheriff tried to effect service. Prior Bureau of Motor Vehicle Records indicated that the owner once lived at 21 Lisbon Street in Lisbon. When the sheriff attempted service there, a man at the address indicated that he knew the owner, but would not give the address to the sheriff. City staff had contacted the owner through her real estate agent, but that person indicated that she did not have an address for the owner and that she lived with friends, family, or on a boat. The owner registered P.O. Box 160, Tenants Harbor, Maine as her address with the city assessor and with code. All mailings to that PO box are returned as undeliverable. The tenant's harbor master does not know the owner's name. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Carey. Now that the procedures that the City Council will follow in conducting this hearing so let me just start that again. Now the procedures that the City Council will follow in conducting this hearing are as follows. Any documents to be used in this proceeding will be marked as Exhibit 1, or as an exhibit. I accept into evidence the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's previously provided Exhibits A through J for 97 Sabata Street. 2, the presentation of evidence for the property will occur in the following order. City Planning and Code Enforcement Department staff will present an opening statement and relevant evidence regarding why they believe the structure at 97 Sabata Street is a nuisance or a dangerous building, and what remedies the City Council shall order. Following the completion of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's presentation, any party of interest will have the opportunity to present an opening statement and any relevant evidence that they want the City Council to consider with regard to whether the structure at issue is a nuisance or dangerous building, and if so, what remedy the Council shall order. Any parties in interest can then ask questions of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department and any witnesses. The Planning and Code Enforcement Department can then ask questions of any party in interest and any witnesses they present. The Planning and Code Enforcement Department can then make additional comments regarding any party in interest presentation. Any party of interest can then make additional comments regarding the presentation of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department. City councilors can then ask questions of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department, a party in interest, or a witness. Each side can then make closing remarks of not more than 2 minutes each. Only parties to these hearings will be allowed to participate. Comments from the public will not be taken at this hearing. After all information is presented, the record will be closed. The City Council will deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a nuisance or dangerous building. If the council determines that the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building and must be secured, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. This is an administrative hearing and not a court proceeding or trial. Therefore, the formal rules of evidence will not apply. As mayor, I will determine the appropriateness and admissibility of evidence on the advice of the city attorney. I ask now that the Lewiston Planning and Code Enforcement Department present the City Council with the information relevant to this matter.
It could, Mr. Mayor, Code Enforcement Benjamin Westman, we need him as a panelist.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Code Enforcement Westman. We appreciate you attending this hearing. Dave, will he be presenting from start to finish on this?
It'll be a team approach, but Ben will be doing most of the talking here.
All right, very good. Go ahead.
So the building at 97 Sabata Street, which I refer to as the structure, is a vacant 2-family dwelling owned by Jennifer L. Cremona by virtue of warranty deed dated November 30th, 2007. The warranty deed to Jennifer Cremona is in your packets as Exhibit A. 97 Sabata Street is identified as parcel ID RE00002668 on the City of Lewiston tax maps. A portion of the City of Lewiston tax maps and property information for that parcel ID is included in your packets as Exhibit B. Bank of America N.A., Nation One Mortgage Company Incorporated, and Wilmington Savings Fund Society, FSB, doing business as Christiana Trust, not in its individual capacity, but solely for BCAT 2014-4TT, have encumbrances on the structure. On September 24, 2020, a notice of this hearing was recorded in the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds in Book 10498 and page 28, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit C. As seen on Exhibit B, the owner most recently gave the city a P.O. box in Tenants Harbor as her address. Both first class and certified mail to the address are returned as undeliverable. On the city attorney detailed, Jennifer has not yet been served with a notice of this hearing. Mr. Carey indicated that earlier this evening. On September 23rd, 2020, Bank of America NA was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of service is in your packets as Exhibit E. Additionally, on September 22nd, 2020, Bank of America Corporation, a Bank of America NA affiliate that is registered to do business in Maine, was served with a notice of hearing. That return of service is in your packets as Exhibit F. On on September 22nd, 2020, Nation One Mortgage Company, Inc. was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of service is in your packets as Exhibit G. On October 1st, 2020, a registered agent for an affiliate of the Nation One Mortgage Company sent a letter rejecting service. And then on September 23rd, 2020, Wilmington Savings Fund Society, FSB, doing business as Christiana Trust, not in its individual capacity, but solely for BCAT 2014-4TT, was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit H. Ben Westman, Code Enforcement Officer, he'll give you more details on the actual status of the structure.
I am City of Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer Benjamin Westman. My qualifications and certifications are listed in your packets as Exhibit I. We also have a slideshow in your packets as Exhibit J. Will describe the conditions of 97 Sabata Street that cause the structure to be dangerous or a nuisance. In addition to the slides I will review here, your packet includes an appendix with additional pictures of condition of the property. Our first proposed conclusion is that the structure has been unsecured for over 4 months and poses a serious threat to public health and safety. As such, we ask that you adopt that portion of our proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law to order the structure to be secured. Second, we request that the council conclude that the 97 Sabata Street qualifies as a dangerous building for the following reasons. The foundation wall of the structure is bowed in, causing the building to be unstable. The exterior front porches and exterior rear porches are structurally unsound, creating a hazard to health and safety. Discarded household items and trash are strewn throughout the interior of the structure, causing fire loading and creating a fire hazard. Water has infiltrated all floors, resulting in deterioration of the ceilings, walls, compromising electrical and fixtures, and led to the development of mold, creating a danger to life and property and constituting a danger to health and safety. The electrical wiring is improperly installed, inadequately maintained, and some electrical connections are exposed, creating a danger to health and safety. The property has no water supply to the plumbing system throughout the structure, creating an unsanitary condition. The furnace doors are held onto the furnace by metal strapping, creating a danger to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and obsolescence. The water heater exhaust is not properly connected, and the vent pipe is dilapidated, allowing carbon monoxide gas to escape into the basement, creating a danger to health and safety. The chimney is missing bricks and mortar and is deteriorated, creating a danger to health and property, to life and property, excuse me. The structure is unsuitable for the use for which it is put. The structure constitutes a hazard to health and safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. The structure is abandoned and has not been secured since at least May 21st, 2020, creating a serious threat to public health and safety. We did go by the property today, and as of today, the property remains unsecured. Any one of these reasons meets Maine's law standard for a dangerous building. Together, they pose a greater danger to the public. As such, we ask that you adopt our proposed findings as fact and conclusions of law in order for the structure to be demolished. We can go through the slide shows in your packets as well, if that's more helpful.
What I was going to suggest, Mr. Mayor, as well, is that we can, if there's a need to do that, we can do a screen share and we can walk through those if the council feels necessary.
So my only concern is if we don't do that, then the public is not transparency for the public. So I would encourage that we quickly go through those slides if we could, please.
Ben, are you going to do screen share or shall I?
Me?
I'll pull it up and we'll go through it together here, I guess.
I would say, yeah, I can't do it on this end. I'm not savvy enough with the Zoom, I'll be honest.
And you folks are not seeing what you should be right now. Oh, give me a second. All right. Ben, if you want to chat, and I will do the navigation.
All right. So the first slide, obviously explaining my certifications. I've been a code enforcement officer for the city of Lewiston for the past 3 years. 3 years prior to that, I was the housing inspector for the Lewiston Housing Authority under the Housing Choice Voucher Program, commonly referred to as the Section 8 Voucher Program. This is a picture of the foundation that was discussed. The picture itself is hard to do the bowing justice. Sometimes we have trouble with that, but the foundation wall is bowed in, creating an unstable condition. It's dangerous to property as it leads to deterioration and potential collapse. Constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance and dilapidation. Is dangerous to life and property. The property has been marked with the red X by the Lewiston Fire Department. Deteriorated front porches create safety hazards. They have unequal step rise and run. Structured unsound stairs on the rear are creating a safety hazard. Constitutes a hazard to health and safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment. Accumulation of materials create an increased fire load for the property. Constitutes a fire hazard and is dangerous to life and property. Interior water damage. Water has infiltrated all floors due to the dilapidated roof, leading to a deteriorated condition of the walls and ceilings. Contributes to development of mold, creating an unsanitary condition. Constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment. And is dangerous to life and safety. You also have additional photos in your appendix of the interior. Interior electric has been impacted on all levels of the building by water infiltration from the dilapidated roof. Water damaged ceilings and walls are apparent, as you can see in the photo. Constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment, and is dangerous to life and property. Interior electrical. There are numerous connections of improper and exposed electrical wires. Constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance and dilapidation. Is dangerous to life and property. Additional photos of deteriorated electric are in your appendix as well. Interior plumbing. The property has no water supply due to pipes being disconnected. Water has been shut off since July 2012. Plumbing throughout the property has been disabled. And next one. The mechanical heating system, as you can see in the photo, shows metal strapping holding the doors of the furnace together. The chimney shows signs of deterioration with the bricks falling off. Constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and obsolescence, and is dangerous to life and property. The water heaters are improperly installed, water connections have been cut, and the exhaust is not properly connected. The dilapidated vent pipe has a potential for allowing carbon monoxide gas to leak into the basement, constitutes a hazard to inadequate maintenance and dilapidation, and is dangerous to life and property. Access to the property is unsecured and has been since at least May 21st, 2020. And as I stated earlier on the review of the property today, the building remains unsecured. Constitutes a hazard to safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment, and is dangerous to the property. In conclusion, the building is structurally unstable and unsanitary. The building constitutes a fire hazard. It constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. It is dangerous to life and property. The building is dangerous and a nuisance. Therefore, the building must be demolished.
All right, thank you, David. Does that conclude your presentation of evidence?
It does. There are additional photos in the appendix that we could review quickly if we need to for the transparency of the presentation.
I think so. I think we've seen enough photos that gives the public a general idea of the type of building that we're dealing with, unless a counselor feels differently. Okay, seeing no objection to that. So at this point, with planning ending their presentation, we are going to allow parties of interest to have an opportunity to present opening statements. Before I go to that, I just want to make sure we have one party in interest, an attorney Folsom, and I believe she said she was with Bank of America, but I want to do a check to make sure that there's no other parties of interest in our attendees. Okay, seeing none. At this point, Attorney Folsom, you're welcome to have the opportunity to present an opening statement and any relevant evidence that you want the City Council to consider with regards to whether this structure at issue is a nuisance or dangerous building.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you very much, Attorney Folsom.
I'm kind of a Zoom novice myself here. I am an attorney with Corday & Associates. We have an office in South Portland. We represent Bank of America, and they hold a first lien mortgage on this property. This property is in active foreclosure. It was set to go to final judgment last winter, but for inclement weather, that date was canceled, and before anything could be rescheduled for the spring, as we all know, COVID arrived and we were never able to finish up, and we're still on pause at this point, waiting for the court to resume foreclosure activities. My client works through a servicer who's based out of California called Carrington Mortgage, and they were only recently alerted that the property is no longer secured. It was secured at one point. I don't know whether just time or vandals or what have you have caused the building to be unsecured. This is an FHA, HUD insured loan, and so at this point, Carrington and Bank of America are taking bids to remediate any immediate hazard. Obviously, there's significant steps that would need to be needed to make the property livable. That's not necessarily what they're trying to repair at this time, but to remediate any hazards so that the building can be secured, considered safe, and reverted back to HUD when we're able to finish the foreclosure. I had had a chance to see those photos from the code enforcement officer earlier, and they do comport with what we believe to be the distressed nature of the property. So we don't necessarily have any objection to the property being considered hazardous, but we are asking, if possible, to allow the bank to go in. They're taking bids right now, actually, to bring the property up to a unhazard condition so the foreclosure can be completed and the property can be taken over by the FHA HUD. So we're just looking for some time before any demolition order might be issued.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any questions about planning and code enforcement?
I do not. I do not.
All right, thank you. And planning and code enforcement, do you have any questions of the party in interest?
Ms. Folsom, maybe, could you just, who do you represent again? I didn't get the name of the mortgage company.
We represent the bank that actually holds the mortgage. The other two folks, Wilmington and Nation One, were prior title holders. They're no longer holders of the mortgage. We are attorneys for the current first lien mortgage holder and plaintiff in the active foreclosure, Bank of America, N.A.
I thought you mentioned something about Cartier Mortgage or something. I wasn't clear as to what you.
A lot of folks confused because Bank of America is obviously a very prolific local lender, but for some of their government-involved loans, they actually use a service company. We don't interact with Bank of America directly on this loan, though we do on others. All the management is taken care of by a company out of California called Carrington Mortgage Services, and they're the ones that are coordinating the property work and in the process of collecting bids right now. They're not a lender, they're a service company.
Okay. Thank you.
Technically I represent them both Carrington and Bank of America, who's actually the plaintiff and note holder in the foreclosure and the owner of the mortgage.
I guess a follow-up question to that, this is Benjamin Westman. I've been dealing quite a bit with a group called MCS. I believe they're out of Texas, like a preservation company. Are they associated with you or the mortgage holder in some fashion, or are they another entity?
They're a vendor because obviously the bank is located out of state. They use local vendors for any type of on-the-ground property. I don't deal with the vendors directly. I just deal with that company I just mentioned, Carrington, and that MCS is the vendor that they would use for local on-the-ground work. Okay.
I don't know that we have any more questions, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure when the appropriate time is, but a couple comments or considerations maybe as to how we proceed.
Okay, and do you have any questions of her about when they would be able to secure this building or anything?
Well, that's I guess maybe this is the right time to say this. So from staff's perspective, certainly the property's been a nuisance. It's been unsecured. It's been vacant. As you saw from the photos from Ben, we certainly have concerns regarding the safety of it and its contributing blighting effect to the neighborhood. With that in mind, we would recommend that the council continue forward with this evening's action. That said, if Ms. Folsom and the folks she represents want to continue to work with us within a certain amount of or agreed upon time to come up with an implementation schedule as to how they can secure this building and make it safe and potentially get this thing back on the market into the hands of someone who can do something, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I would suggest that we go forward with the action, or I'd recommend that the council act upon the dangerous building so that we don't necessarily have to revisit this. We've done this in the past with other properties where we've tried to work closely with an interested party in coming up with a detailed implementation schedule where they demonstrate both technical and financial capacity. They come up with established deadlines in effort to try to save a building. We've had mixed success in doing that. We actually have a couple that are still pending that you folks acted upon, that we are still trying to work with them in hopes to save a building. But in all those cases, you folks did go forward and make a finding with respect to the dangerous building. That affords us the opportunity not to have to go through this process again. Also affords us the opportunity to collect any fees or penalties that we've since incurred engaging the city's services through the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. So Attorney Fosun, would you have any additional comments at this point?
All I can mention is that because this is a HUD-insured FHA loan, my client is highly incentivized to keep this as an existing structure. The penalties on lenders when there's an FHA or a HUD loan involved are pretty severe. So they are definitely motivated to try and keep this structure from being demolished and bring it back. I actually live in Lewiston, and I've driven by this building hundreds of times because I like the Thai restaurant right down the street. And I've told them they need to do something to, because I'm very familiar with this building the minute I saw the address. So I can tell you that I'm going to be speaking with my rep tomorrow, and I can definitely advise her to make sure that the property gets secured immediately. I don't think they were aware that it was, again, unsecured, and work with, was it Mr. Hediger that was speaking, to try and get some sort of a plan to move them ahead. I told them they had to hustle, and as a resident of Lewiston, I know you're very strong on handling these kinds of properties, and I told them they are going to need to pay attention. So I'm hoping we can come up with something that works for everybody.
All right, thank you. And if I could, I'd like to bring Attorney Carey into.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So at this point, Attorney Carey, I mean, should we allow councilors to ask questions, or do you have a recommendation at this point?
I think that in clarifying questions of the council, either way. I guess the piece that I wanted to share for the council's information, our recommendation is to consider that service has not been affected on the owner at this point. And so that needs to happen before an order can be entered against her. The statute discusses this situation and provides that when the name or address of an owner or party in interest is unknown or is not ascertainable with reasonable diligence, notice can be published once a week for 3 successive weeks in the newspaper. So I would suggest, based upon the service history that I discussed earlier, that the address is not known or ascertainable with reasonable diligence. And so I suggest the council continue the matter to effect service by publication in the Sun Journal based upon the requirement of 3 successive weeks. It appears that the next council meeting would be November 17th.
Okay.
So,
and then that would allow the party of interest 3 weeks while we have to do our service to secure the building and other things that they might agree to with planning and code, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. And when the hearing is continued, one of 2 things would happen. If the owner appears at that time, the hearing up to this point would start over, so that owner has an opportunity to make sure that she has a chance to have a hearing and put any evidence that she believes. At that time, the council would then could ask any questions of her or the bank or the city, and then deliberate and decide what matter should be taken. So to answer your initial question, Mr. Mayor, the council could wait with questions or could ask them of the bank or the code at this time.
Okay. So with the information and suggestion from the city attorney, I think at this point he's suggesting that we continue this. That would allow Attorney Fosun to work with her client and in turn work with code and planning until we effect service by posting or in the newspaper. So with that, is there any interest in a motion to continue?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ray?
I'd like to make that motion to continue the hearing to November 17th's regularly scheduled council meeting under the condition of posting public notice through the media for a consecutive 3 weeks.
Okay.
Did I get that all?
Give me another second from someone, please.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Pettengill. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilor Ray?
A question to Mr. Hediger. Does this delay of 3 weeks cause trouble for you all in moving forward with the process?
Well, I don't know that it causes trouble. It sounds like Ms. Folsom has the ear of the bank anyway to at least get the building secured, and that's one of our biggest concerns in the immediate future, so we don't have any illicit activities occurring inside there. So that's a good thing. So no, this is, and as Mike's noted, we do need to make sure that appropriate notice and services provided to the owners. So I would encourage Ms. Folsom to reach out to myself and Ben Westman so we can talk about how to move forward and get things addressed in the interim. The one concern I do have at some point here, and this will be revisited again on the 17th, is to make sure that when we go through this process, there's a cost to doing this and whatnot. And so we'll discuss that when we get to that point. But I'm always sensitive to when we bring these processes forward that the city is made whole with respect to whatever costs we incur using the city attorney. That's why you don't see a bunch of these, and that we always try to negotiate those and make sure that's part of the agreement when we go through this process. So we have to make sure that service is provided. Great. I'm sure Ms. Folsom will work with us to address immediate concerns over the next 3 weeks.
Okay, and then to Ms. Folsom, I just want to re-emphasize how egregious this property is, especially to neighbors who have reached out with their complaints. And I'm sitting here freezing in my home office right now. It's getting colder out, and so folks might take up residence in an unsecured location. So just really want to impress that urgency again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Jensen?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to support continuation of it. I'm ready to, support condemnation and whatever we have to do now. It's been a blight for years. It's in a very important part of the city on a very visible street. And I just do not have faith that a continuation is really going to get us to a better position. So I'm going to vote no on it.
Okay, and I'll just clarify with Attorney Carey, can we legally condemn this property without service on the owner?
Any action that the city took at this time would not be effective against the owner. It would be effective against the parties that have been served. So the Bank of America clearly, and
okay, thank you.
The others.
Councilor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering if maybe the strategy of moving ahead on declaring it a dangerous building sets us up in a better state for the 17th of November. I mean, it hastens the process. I did visit the property today. I am familiar with these types of issues, having dealt with them many times in previous life. I would think that it would behoove the city to declare this a dangerous building, not demolish the building, attempt service again. It appears that due diligence has been made to date. I'm not sure the publication is going to change anything. I'm hearing that this property was abandoned like in 2012. It would appear that the water and utilities were shut off at that time. So I think ample time has been given, but I guess I'm not in favor of demolishing the building without one more attempt, but I think we should declare it a dangerous building and take whatever action needs to be taken to see that it is secured and secured immediately. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Carey.
Sorry, I was muted. That's absolutely the choice that the council, that's before the council now. I guess the one thing that I might suggest is if the owner brought forward any information at that time, there wouldn't want to allow the owner to argue that the council had already made a decision before to consider that evidence. Obviously, the council was making decisions before, with the evidence before it now, it would make a potentially reconsider that decision based upon new evidence. But it does create the opportunity for an argument, however untrue it may be.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councilor Ray?
Not a question as much of a comment that we've seen a couple of these before, and we did move it forward with one last term without notification from the owner, and you know, just making sure that we are doing this properly so that the person who is actually responsible, the person who purchased a property that they could not upkeep and then abandoned it, is part of this equation. I'm not thrilled about deferring it either, but I think following the process so that we hopefully become whole again, it feels more accurate to me and more like the choice that I will be making, and I hope others join me in.
Yeah, and so I would agree. I think the most important thing is getting that building secured. So I would ask David, I mean, can the city get that secured and then bill whoever, the parties of interest or the owner?
There's a process with that as well. Again, we involve the city attorney. There's notice involved in doing that. We engage the services of Public Works to secure it. It's going to be very easy to secure this building at this point. It's literally a door lasp with a padlock on it. So, you know, there's not a lot of costs involved in this. And I would think, again, hopefully Attorney Folsom could make that happen quickly.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Corporation Counsel. Does the city incur liability to the adjacent property owners by not acting on this, having been made aware of the condition and the dangerous aspect of it?
No, Councilor.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor Clement?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Madam Clerk, can you just read that motion to the councilors again, please?
The motion is to continue the hearing to the November 17th City Council meeting to allow for additional time for the process of attempting to reach the owner.
All right. So are there any other questions or comments from councilors? Okay, seeing none, call the roll, please.
Sure. Councilor from Ward 5?
No.
Ward 6?
No.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Ward 4?
No.
Motion passed by a vote of 4-3.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all, parties of party and interest, Attorney Carey, and Planning and Code staff, and we'll see you in November. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 12, please.
Item number 12, resolve adopting the 2020 City of Lewiston Economic Development Plan. Requested action to adopt the resolve adopting the 2020 City of Lewiston Economic Development Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Jelinas. And Link is listed as presenting.
I certainly could present, but I believe you've pretty much heard this in some great detail earlier this evening. This is really a formality to adopt the economic development plan that has been presented and the metrics for analysis of it to measure our ability to implement it. So simply looking for an adoption of the plan at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none to the public. Back to the council. Call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yeah.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thank you, Lincoln. Agenda item number 13, please.
Item number 13, resolve accepting the grant of $8,000 from the Project Canopy Community Forestry Assistance Grant Program from the Maine Forest Service pursuant to the terms of the attached grant application. Requested action to approve the resolve accepting the grant of $8,000 from the Project Canopy Community Forestry Assistance Grant Program from the Maine Forest Service, matching it with city nursery stock and in-kind services.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Questions or I'm sorry, Dale, brief presentation.
If you'd like, this was a grant application that we submitted earlier this summer. It was granted to us during the COVID when we were doing essential services. The arborist didn't feel that he could carry this forward. He now feels into the fall that he can. The in-kind services are site prep for about $2,000. That's prepping the site for the contractor to come in. Those would be in-kind services done by Public Works. Using nursery stock is about $5,000. Some of our nursery stock is getting close to size where it's going to be less manageable in the future, and we want to get it on the streets. And then the final service would really be maintenance, which is required as part of the grant. Those would be the in-kind services that add up to $8,000. This is consistent with the consolidated tree policy that the previous council voted in, I think last fall.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? To the public? And back to the council. Call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 14, please.
Item number 14, recommendation from the City Clerk, Registrar of Voters on actions necessary to conduct the presidential and state election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Requested action to approve the recommendations from the City Clerk, Registrar of Voters on actions necessary to conduct the presidential and state election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. A, that the hours for acceptance of registrations in person only prior to the November 3rd election as required by Maine Revised Statutes Annotated Title 21A, Section 122-6A2 be set on business days at 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 20th through November 2nd, and additional hours of 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on October 14th, 22nd, and 23rd, October 24th from 9 a.m. to noon, and October 30th until 5 p.m. B, that the names of those persons who register during the closed period for registration shall be recorded in accordance with Maine Revised Statutes Annotated Title 21A, Section 122, subsection 7D, and C, pursuant to Title 21A, Section 759, subsection 7, absentee ballots will be processed at the central polling place at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m., and any and all remaining shall be processed at 8 p.m. if necessary.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor Joy. And then Kathy, on section A, you said October at the 4 to 7 p.m. time. You said October 14th, 22nd, and 23rd, but the requested action says the 27th. I just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you. Yes, the 27th. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, any question? Is there anything else you want to present, Madam Clerk?
No, unless councilors have any questions. We typically will do an election status update under other business in the month of October leading up to the election. But for this item, we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the council? Councilor Ray?
Thank you. So the times and dates that are under Section A are acceptance of registrations in person. Does that mean someone couldn't go in tomorrow in person to the city clerk's office and make a register to vote?
So this is for in-person only during this time frame. So at present, people can come into the office. They can really come into the office year-round, but they can also register to vote through the mail up until October 19th by state law. So this is just outlining the fact that basically mail-in registrations will not be accepted, and we will only be accepting in-person registration by state law. Those are the dates, and then we're just having the council approve our ability to do it during the extended hours as well. It's really just a procedure under the law.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments to the public? Back to the council, Councilor Clement.
Quick question for the clerk. In-person registration is allowed on election day as well? by
It is,
state
yes,
law?
sir. Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Any other questions or comments from councilors? Seeing none, call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Ward 4?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, and was that the only action on this, or is there another action?
No, that was the only action on item number 14.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 15.
Item number 15, reports and updates.
Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've narrowed it down to 2 reports instead of 3, as I told you before the meeting. So the school committee, just a couple of things to note. The Maine Council on Aging recently recognized the Green Ladle for its response to COVID-19. We all know what a wonderful program it is, but it's great to have that statewide recognition. We also recently heard from Chef Karen about the Green Ladle's work to reopen safely and also conduct their food truck enterprise. So they're doing very well. In terms of school response to COVID-19, all COVID-19 positives are being monitored, and the school department continues to work closely with the state to identify close contacts based on schedules and where people should be in the buildings at each time. We've also, or the superintendent's office has put out a COVID-19 dashboard. The first iteration came out October 2nd. I believe they're going to work to update it to let us know how many positives per school, if they're students or staff, how many folks are expected to quarantine. And then as a result of the close contacts, some folks are being, so some students aren't in quarantine, but if their staff member is, then they can't come to school because there's not enough adults to go around, basically. So we're working on clarifying some of that language to better understand how the reopening of schools is going. Different committee, Androscoggin County Budget Committee, finalized the budget as much as we could last Wednesday night. So far, we reduced the tax levy increase to a 0.23% instead of the proposed 3.6% that originally came. We found an unutilized jail reserve fund, of which we're going to take about $100,000 from to put in a body scanner in the jail. Given the death at the jail in late summer, this is a way to hopefully prevent that from ever happening again at the jail, and had been initially deferred due to COVID, but using the jail reserves results in no impacts on the taxes. And then the public hearing for that committee and the county budget from the committee is October 21st at 6 p.m. at the county building.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Khalid.
Thank you. Just trying to figure out the mute button. This question is for Councilor Ray. Can you tell me if there is any written policy or any document when a student / a staff tests positive for COVID, and also when what is the procedure for that, and also when anyone comes back to the school property? And can we also, is it possible to get any of that written information?
Yes. So I think most of what you just asked for is available on the Lewiston Public Schools website. I will send along the Google Doc link that where Superintendent Langlis has been updating these things over time. I think that's the best resource. It was interesting last night to hear from Superintendent Langlis and Assistant Superintendent Karen Paquette about this, because sometimes the CDC follows up, sometimes the school has to follow up based on, kind of what category someone fits into. Are they the person who's testing positive? How do they come back? Are they someone who is a close contact? How do they come back? And then are they someone who has to study or teach remotely as a result of staffing levels? So there's kind of 3 different scenarios. I think there's just a lot of individual follow-up happening from the school department at this point, but these community letters as well as the dashboard are on the website, and I'll send that link to everyone.
One more.
Go ahead, Councilor Khalid.
Thank you. So there are, a number of students who are entirely remote using Zoom, but I have been notified that a lot of and I'm talking from like the immigrant population, the students just are not coming to, getting on Zoom and all of that. So is there someone from the school that calls the parents or follows up with the parents to tell them that their student has, especially for like, middle school, maybe elementary school, I'm not sure, that tells them, oh, your kid has a Zoom class this time and that time, just wondering about that situation.
Yeah, so I do want to make one clarification. Remote learning isn't entirely dependent on Zoom. There are other activities and papers that have been passed along to families, is my understanding, especially since we are not one-to-one as a district yet. Not every student or student's family has a device to log on to Zoom, if that is a requirement. The message we heard from Superintendent Langlis on that last night was, if a student falls into the cohort that is remote only, and they are not submitting work, they're not engaging, they're not meeting the expectations, then that is going to be reported out to families. But there was a question last night about if they would be disciplined about that. And it's not punitive, it's not disciplinary, but there will be follow-up with those families especially the students who are not meeting the expectation.
Okay, thank you. All set, Councilor Khalid? All right, thank you. Any other reports or updates? Okay, agenda item number 16.
Item number 16, any other city business councilors or others may have relating to Lewiston City Government?
Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I, again, notified you before the meeting, there were 3 things that came up to me through different constituent outreaches over the past couple of weeks. The first is constituents have reached out to me about the destruction and removal of political signs. The questions that they asked subsequently were, one was told there's a $250 fine if someone is discovered doing this, and I didn't know if that came from state or city ordinance, so I was hoping for an answer on that. And then not purposeful work, what is PW? Public Works, there we go. Have they reported seeing more of those in this election season where signs are violating any ordinance or right-of-way principles?
Okay, hold on one second.
So I believe, Councilor, the $250 fine is in state statutes. The political sign questions, actually, we will have to have David Hediger respond to tomorrow, because political signs are overseen, or all signs are overseen through the Land Use Code and the Code Enforcement Department. So political signs are not under the city clerk's office, even though they're election related, because they're signs in the city, they go under code enforcement. But we can certainly have David Hediger reach out to you tomorrow. I don't know if Dale Dowdy has heard anything through Public Works.
I have not, and that's something that likely would have come up. I've heard about it in other communities from other Public Works directors, but I have not here. Tomorrow morning, I will be over at Public Works, and if I find out something, I'll certainly let you know.
Okay, I think overall the message that I would impart is that it's very disappointing to hear if there's intentional destruction or removal, especially in COVID times. It seems like people aren't knocking, at least on my door, as much. And so I think that's the way that people are getting their names out there. So I wanted to make sure to address that for the constituents. Additionally, election related, that was another point of outreach. So constituents reached out to me about concerns over security at polling locations. They specifically referenced national rhetoric of voter intimidation and asked if there would be police stationed at the polls or other observers with authority.
Right, so you have great timing because we have a meeting tomorrow afternoon, myself, City Administration, Public Works, and Police Department to discuss that very topic. The topic really being crowd management and crowd control. As we've been saying, the state has limited the number of people that are allowed into each polling place at one time. The cap statewide is 50 people per polling place, and that includes election workers. So we have about 15 election workers at each location in Lewiston. So that means we can only accommodate about 35 voters at one time at the polls by state law. And that means that everyone else will be queuing up outside. So we are meeting tomorrow to discuss some safety ideas just to keep the crowd safe, particularly at the polling places where there isn't really a front sidewalk and you walk out the door right into the parking lot. Particularly the Armory and the Green Ladle. So we will be talking about some safety precautions, such as, for example, should Public Works put up some sawhorses? We definitely want to designate sort of the queuing line, the waiting area. Should we rent outside floodlights for nighttime? Again, for safety. We're just really nervous about the mixture of pedestrians and vehicles. And so whenever we do the mayoral runoff election in December, we always rent an outside floodlight for people crossing over from the Colisée parking lot to Longley, so that's not unusual for us. And then the other conversation we will be having is the safety and security regarding, like you said, kind of the national comments on a national level, some of the negative rhetoric and concerns about intimidation and people at the polls. We have been talking to the chief of police, and it is not unusual for us to have police officers at the polling place. So that is definitely something that we will be reviewing tomorrow as well, Councilor.
Thank you. And my last thing, I promised 3. There was an additional constituent who reached out about concerns over unmasked activities through the Recreation Department, now that Recreation is renting out the Armory again. I copied Dennis and Dale into an email to Recreation Superintendent Jason Hankin, but was hoping for an update.
I did see your email, Councilor Ray. I know the superintendent, Recreation Superintendent, did reply initially with the program that they have and the rules outlining in that, but no additional updates at this point. What I would ask is I'll ask Superintendent Hankin to provide a more detailed update in the coming days, and we'll share that with the entire City Council.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I guess I have one quick question, Kathy. So for seniors who are having difficulty standing and are expected to be in this queue, I think the last time we had issues with long lines, that was a concern that was brought up. Have you given that some thought?
Sure. So I'll just go ahead and give you the quick election update, if that's okay. I know Councilor Clement has his hand up and has some other comments, but I'll just quickly give you the standard election update. As of last Thursday, we had 6,500 pending requests for absentee ballots. Voters have been able to request their absentee ballots since the beginning of August. So we've had to hold all those requests until we receive the shipment of ballots from the state printer. which we did a little bit ago. And then we shipped out this past Thursday morning 6,500 absentee ballots. Those have already been hitting the mailboxes of our residents, which is great. As of now, or between then and now, we've issued another 1,000 ballots. So for a total, we've issued about 7,500 absentee ballots already. We have a return rate already of 26% of everything that we've sent out. So the voters are being fantastic as far as voting their ballot and mailing it back in, or I should say returning it back. The ballot drop box outside has been very popular. We had 50 ballots in there on Saturday, over 100 on Sunday, and about 200 yesterday and today. So it's an extremely popular service that we're pleased that voters are taking advantage of. And we've also opened the early voting polling place in the City Council chambers that kicked off yesterday. We had about 200 voters there yesterday and about 200 voters there again today. So the message that we're working to get out, Mr. Mayor, to all voters, but particularly the elderly and disabled, because we share your same concern about not being able to stand in line for an extended period of time. And so the voters really have several options in which they can vote different methods, and it's completely up to them and their comfort level. One is to request an absentee ballot to be mailed to their home. Another one is to absentee vote in person here at City Hall. And thanks to the national grant that we received, we were able to extend those hours, extend the weeks during the business day, as well as at evening hours and Saturday hours. So we're trying to make it as convenient for folks as possible. And then of course, the third option is to go to the polls. What we are concerned about and want to avoid at all costs is for voters to pull up to the polling place, see a large line outside and become frustrated and leave. We don't want that, because that is their last option to vote and their last day to vote. So we are trying to get the word out that people have multiple options to vote. It is completely their choice how they choose to vote based upon their comfort level. But because of the limitation of 50 people at a time, we feel we don't have a choice other than people are going to have to queue up outside. So we're letting people know ahead of that time. We do not want our message to be misconstrued, that we're sending a message of scaring the voters or disenfranchising the voters. That's obviously not our intent, but we want them to be prepared and aware of that potential. What we are seeing, Mr. Mayor, downstairs is a very fast and quick turnaround time, which is really great. For all Lewiston voters, they are only voting on one ballot. As you know, we do not have a local ballot this election, and folks may not be aware, but there are no state referendum questions or state bond issue questions. So the only ballot that voters will be voting on is the state candidate ballot. It is double-sided, but there are only a maximum of 7 races on the ballot. So we are finding that most voters are in and out of the voting booth within 1 minute. It's very, very fast. We are sharing the copy of the sample ballot. That seems to be taking the length of time because the backside of the ballot is laid out for ranked choice voting. We're seeing a lot of voters who tend to only vote every 4 years in a presidential election. So this is the first time they're seeing the ballot layout structure of the ranked choice voting grid, if you will, that table chart that they have to vote. So that's where folks are getting confused. So we are putting ads in the newspaper with a copy of that sample ballot so people can see the example ahead of time along with the written instructions. We're putting that on the city's website, social media. We're really trying to get that word out so people can understand how to do that. But most folks seem to know how they want to vote. They would have voted 2 months ago if we had the election 2 months ago. So that's really not the delay. So folks are really quick in the booth. So we're hoping that on election day, the lines will be fast moving. They might appear to be long, or they might be long, especially because people in line are going to be spaced out at 6-foot intervals for social distancing. So when you pull up to the polling place, you might see a really long line of people spaced out at 6 feet, but hopefully that line is very fast moving because we're expecting a really quick flow and turnover because the ballot is relatively short with only the 7 races.
All right, thank you. Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe, if I heard correctly this afternoon, the governor has announced that the relaxation of some of the rules so that November 1st, we will have 50% of capacity or 100 persons in these indoor things. I'm pretty sure that was as of November 1st, but that's something to look into. If that's the case, that should really help to relieve some of the anxiety about the interior of the polling places, I would think.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Clement. We're certainly going to be watching the governor's announcement. The material that we saw referenced those locations because they are sit-down locations and people are not moving around. And so they specifically said dining places and movie theaters. And there was one other example, which I can't remember right now, but it was something that you would go in and sit and not move around and interact. So at this point, it is our understanding that polling places are not included in that, but we certainly will be monitoring that. Thank you, Councilor.
I would suspect that if we were to inquire the governor's office, her interest in transparency and voting and things like that, she might give that consideration if it's a valid concern, and it would seem to me that it is. It
Yes,
seems
thank
that
you, Councilor.
the number of potential voters is huge.
Right. We did meet with the governor directly via a Zoom call about a month or two ago and expressed that desire and expressed our concerns. At that point, she was not comfortable in doing that because of the nature of people moving around and intermingling as opposed to being in a seated venue. And that third example was religious services. And if you're at a church, again, you're seated and you're not really moving around as much as you would be at a polling place. So we have done that, Councilor. We can certainly do that again as well, or try that again. Thank you.
Well, we've got a month until election, so it may change, hopefully.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question. I just wanted to commend you, Kathy. You and your team have just done a phenomenal job. The work that has been put into this, you know, it's just, you just should be commended. Thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Councilor. We appreciate that. We'll pass that along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments related to city business?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
A question of privilege. If we might have like a 2-minute recess before we go into our executive session.
Yep. What we'll do is we'll take a vote on executive session. So with that, I'll entertain a motion and then we'll take a few minutes getting there, I'm sure.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councilor Khalid, seconded by Councilor Clement or Jelinas.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Your choice, Kathy. They both nodded yes. All right, all in favor?
Okay,
Oh, sorry, call the roll. Yeah,
quick
call the roll.
call. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Councilor from Ward 5?
Yeah.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Ward 4?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you all.